Welcome to Wartime Stories, the channel dedicated to uncovering the strange, the unexplained, and the genuinely terrifying tales that haunt the periphery of military life. Tonight, we journey deep into a place many soldiers know by name, but few understand its true unsettling nature: Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and the vast, dense training grounds known simply as the Back 40. This isn't just another sprawling army base. It's a terrifying nexus, a patch of earth where the mundane duty of soldiering collides violently with the unequivocally paranormal. When you look at Fort Campbell on a map, you see a massive installation straddling the border of southern Kentucky and northern Tennessee. You see the home of the famed 101st Airborne Division, the Screaming Eagles, and the 5th Special Forces Group, the revered Green Berets. But nestled within this is an even more secretive, more elite unit whose existence is often spoken of in hushed, reverent tones: the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, otherwise known as the Night Stalkers. These are the elite helicopter pilots, the aviators who fly into the darkest, most dangerous corners of the world, often operating so far below the radar they might as well be ghosts themselves. Their motto is, "Night Stalkers don't quit." But what happens when their own training area, the Back 40, quits on them, spitting out sightings and encounters that defy the very laws of physics and reality they're trained to master? The Back 40 is an old American expression, often used by farmers to denote a large, remote, and often neglected area of land far from the main buildings. Here at Fort Campbell, it refers to a staggering 93,000 acres of dense forests, grassy fields, streams, and lakes. It is the perfect sprawling canvas for live fire and field training. Yet this isolated wilderness, just a stone's throw from the land between the Lakes National Recreation Area, is not merely a training site. It is, by many accounts, a magnet for the unexplained. The soldiers who train here, from the infantry guys digging defensive lines for weeks at a time to the pilots running low-altitude night maneuvers, often find that they are not alone. And the things they see are not in the training manual. They've seen UFOs, like the infamous egg-shaped objects sighted near Kentucky the day Captain Thomas Mantle was killed, chasing one in 1948. They've seen the Rommel diamond-shaped craft that an Army police officer reported chasing near the base. They've heard the whispers of the Kelly Hopkinsville Green Men. And lately, the most chilling reports are of the creature known as the Dogman. Imagine being a pilot in the 160th, flying a multi-million-dollar Black Hawk or Chinook helicopter. Your world viewed through the ghostly green hue of night vision goggles or the stark, fiery contrast of thermal imaging. Your entire mission is built on precision, control, and absolute situational awareness. Now imagine, in that ultra-controlled environment, seeing something on your thermal display that stands 8 or 9 feet tall, bipedal, with a canine head, moving with an impossible speed and size that rules out any known animal. That is the kind of terrifying contradiction that defines the Back 40. The Night Stalkers are the perfect unsettling witnesses to these events. They are trained to report everything, to maintain immaculate logbooks, and to process information under extreme duress. When one of them reports a sighting not of enemy forces, but of a cryptid, a literal monster, it carries an unbearable weight of credibility. But the Army, as we know from multiple reports, has a policy: keep it to yourself. Never say anything about it to any. This is the 160th oath of silence, an unspoken rule that turns these terrifying true experiences into whispered campfire tales among the most battle-hardened soldiers. Our journey begins by setting the scene, understanding the geography and the history that makes this area such a powerful epicenter for the paranormal. The land between the lakes, LBL area, a vast recreational zone bordering the base, has its own local legend, the beast of the land between the lakes. This creature, whether called the Dogman, the Beast, or the Loop Guru by the Shawnee people, has been seen here for centuries. French trappers working with Shawnee fur traders were warned about a shape-shifting creature called the Loop Guru. It is said to be the vengeful spirit of a medicine man who abused his power and was killed while still in his wolf form. These old legends, rooted in the tragic history of the Trail of Tears, which ran right through the base, seem to give the Back 40 its soul. A dark, primal energy that rejects the military's attempt to impose order. When the Night Stalkers fly low, their powerful rotor wash stirring the trees, they are not just disturbing a forest. They are disturbing ancient, angry spirits. We will explore the chilling possibility that the Dogman is not merely an undocumented animal, but a manifestation of this cultural and historical trauma, a creature born of a curse and powered by the rage of the displaced. The military is a machine of logic, precision, and overwhelming firepower. Yet in the deep, dark woods of the Back 40, even the most elite soldiers are forced to confront the impossible. The things that no amount of training or technology can prepare them for. This is their story. The stories they were never supposed to tell. Witnessed from the unique, terrifying vantage point of an elite military helicopter pilot. Prepare yourself, because we are entering the darkness with the Night Stalkers. The 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, universally known as the Night Stalkers, operates in a league of its own. They are the Army's quiet professionals, the air mobility arm for the entire Special Operations community. When Delta Force or the SEALs need insertion or extraction in the dead of night, often thousands of miles behind enemy lines, it is the Night Stalkers who fly them. Their entire existence is predicated on secrecy, precision, and an unshakable adherence to protocols. For them, operational security is not a suggestion, it is a way of life, an ingrained habit that saves lives. This culture of absolute professionalism is precisely why their encounters in the Back 40 of Fort Campbell carry such a chilling ring of truth. These are not bored, low-ranking soldiers looking to sensationalize a sound in the woods. These are highly trained warrant officers, master sergeants, and captains, pilots, and crew chiefs whose credibility is their currency. They fly technologically advanced aircraft, including modified MH-60 Blackhawks and MH-47 Chinooks, equipped with state-of-the-art radar, forward-looking infrared, FLIR, and sophisticated night vision systems. They are trained to identify targets in complex low-light environments, distinguishing between a deer, a human, and a vehicle with split-second accuracy. When they report a massive bipedal canine entity moving faster than anything known to man, their testimony cannot simply be dismissed as mistaken identity. The Night Stalkers' training often requires them to operate in the Back 40 during what they call no-go conditions. Moonless, overcast nights with zero ambient light to simulate the worst-case scenarios of real combat. It is during these hours, when the only light is the ghostly green or the thermal red of their advanced gear, that the creatures of the Back 40 choose to appear. Their thermal sensors, designed to cut through fog and darkness, capture an undeniable heat signature, a towering mass of muscle, sometimes crouched, sometimes fully erect on two legs. The sheer size, often estimated between 7 and 9 feet tall, rules out coyotes, bears, or hogs, the usual wildlife in the area. The movement, described by pilots as a low stance, booking it, or sprinting on two legs, defies the gait of any conventional animal. The terrifying aspect for the air crews is the realization that their million-dollar technology, meant to give them godlike vision, simply confirms the existence of a creature that should not exist. The culture of silence surrounding these incidents is multifaceted. Firstly, it is a military base. reporting a dog monster to the chain of command, particularly in a high-stakes unit like the 160th, is career suicide. It's an instant referral to mental health and a guaranteed end to fleeting missions. The command structure, including the first sergeants and commanding officers, understands this. They often address the issue not by denying the sightings, but by controlling the information. As the original source material suggests, when soldiers report these encounters, they are often called into the first sergeant's office and told to keep it to ourselves and to never say anything about it to anyone. This acts as an unofficial, yet ironclad oath of silence. The military cannot officially acknowledge a creature like the Dogman without attracting national attention, ridicule, and a complete cessation of training operations in the back 40. For a base as vital and active as Fort Campbell, the operational cost of admitting the paranormal is too high. Furthermore, the Night Stalkers are also witnesses to the other strange phenomena that plague Fort Campbell, most notably the UFO sightings. The base, as referenced in the previous section, is a hotbed of unexplained aerial vehicles. When an elite pilot, whose job is to track air movements, reports seeing a Rammel diamond-shaped craft or an egg-shaped object maneuvering at impossible speeds, the default response is classified information control. The Army has a long history of dismissing or covering up such reports, often citing mistaken identity or weather balloons. By conflating the cryptid sightings, Dogman, with the UFO sightings, the Army can effectively bundle all unexplained events under the umbrella of classified information, or worse, dismiss them as mass delusion. This blanket denial further enforces the 160th's oath of silence. The soldiers learn quickly. What happens in the back 40 stays in the back 40. This leads to an internal crisis for the soldiers. They are trained to rely on their gear, their senses, and their teammates. When all three confirm the presence of an impossible creature, but the command denies it, the soldier is left alone with a psychological burden. They begin to question their own sanity and their relationship with reality. This psychological toll is one of the most significant, yet least discussed, consequences of the back 40's paranormal activity. The Night Stalkers, who thrive on confidence and control, are suddenly confronted with their own vulnerability in the face of the unknown. Their silent encounters turn them from military professionals into reluctant witnesses of a terrifying ancient truth that Fort Campbell's leadership desperately wishes to keep hidden. This invisible threat, this psychological warfare waged by the Dogman, is perhaps more insidious than any enemy they face overseas. The silence is not just about security, it is about self-preservation, both for the military's reputation and the pilot's sanity. While the Night Stalkers represent the apex of technology and secrecy, the backbone of Fort Campbell's operations is the 101st Airborne Division, the famed Screaming Eagles. These are the infantrymen, the ground troops, who spend extended, grueling periods immersed in the back 40 during field training exercises, or FTCs, lasting anywhere from 2 weeks to a grueling 4 weeks. Their experience of the paranormal is far more visceral and terrifyingly intimate than that of the pilots high above. They are the ones digging fighting positions, sleeping in their patrol bases, and pulling fire watch during the absolute darkness of a moonless night, directly in the path of whatever hunts in those woods. It is through their stories, often shared in low whispers around a makeshift campfire or a smoke pit, the actual namesake of a popular story-sharing platform, that the true haunting legacy of Fort Campbell is revealed. The 101st soldiers are constantly exposed to the raw, untamed wilderness of the 93,000 acres. They are the ones who feel the unsettling atmosphere of the area, a palpable sense of being watched that is pervasive and unnerving. They are the ones who report the physical, undeniable evidence. The snapping of trees, the sounds of something far too large to be a deer crashing through the brush, and the deep, guttural noises that silence entire groups of coyotes instantly. One soldier's account describes hearing loud, deep sniffing noises near his position, followed by his team reporting the distinct, horrible smell of a wet dog, a signature sensory detail that has become synonymous with the Dogman encounters. This is not a distant blip on a radar screen. This is a creature a mere 15 to 20 meters away, sinking into a crouched pose, its silhouette massive and menacing against the darkness. The terror for the infantry soldiers is compounded by the sheer duration of their exposure. They are not merely passing through. They are establishing temporary, fixed positions, essentially placing themselves directly in the creature's domain for days on end. The fatigue, the stress of constant security checks, and the lack of sleep amplify the paranoia. But the encounters are far too concrete to be mere exhaustion-induced hallucinations. One particularly chilling account involves a soldier pulling guard duty near a storm drain pipe, an encounter that transcends a mere sighting. The soldier's buddy was physically grabbed, or at least touched, by something inside the drain, rolling around and screaming that it tried to pull me into the drain. The resulting tear in the soldier's uniform was physical proof that something non-human, or at least non-rational, had occurred. The witness, using their night vision goggles, NVCGs, then saw the creature an 8 to 9 foot tall, biped with a canine's head, standing on its hind legs, looking right at them. It was a full, terrifying confirmation of the legend. Beyond the cryptid encounters, the 101st is also steeped in the base's general paranormal lore. Fort Campbell is geographically burdened by history. The Trail of Tears, the forced relocation of Native American nations, ran directly through the base. As one soldier noted, there are tons of unmarked graves that the Army has either intentionally ignored or simply lacks the funding to address. This history has fueled the widespread rumors and superstitions among the troops about skinwalkers and ancient Native American spirits haunting the Back 40. These are not just ghost stories. They provide a mythological context for the creatures being seen of evil. If the Dogman is indeed the Loop Guru, the vengeful spirit of a Shawnee medicine man, as suggested by local folklore, then the training area is not just a forest, but an actively cursed landscape. The enduring legacy of the 101st at Fort Campbell is that they are the division that bears witness to this history. They sleep on the unmarked graves, they train in the haunted forests, and they are the ones who have to grapple with the contradiction of being the world's most elite fighting force, yet being utterly powerless against the primal terror of the Back 40. When they have returned from the field, they carry not just the physical weariness of the FTCXC, but the psychological burden of having seen the impossible, an experience that the military commands them to suppress. Their silence is the foundation upon which the base's reputation as a paranormal magnet is built, a chilling testament to the fact that even the most advanced military installation cannot erase an ancient, malevolent history. The mission was designated a routine night vision goggle proficiency flight, a common training requirement for the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment. The aircrew consisted of 2 pilots and 2 crew chiefs strapped into a MH-60 Black Hawk. Their objective, a low-altitude ingress through the dense forest canopy of the Back 40, navigating strictly by terrain association and global positioning system coordinates, with all external lighting suppressed, a blackout condition designed to mirror real-world covert operations. The air was thick, heavy with the moisture of the deep woods, and the night was absolutely devoid of natural light, the perfect stage for the Night Stalkers to practice their craft. They were flying low, just above the treetops, the rotor wash creating a violent, temporary blizzard of leaves and debris below them. Inside the cockpit, the world was a high-tech monochrome. The pilots' heads were burdened by their helmets and the attached night vision goggles, transforming the inky blackness into a ghostly landscape of greens and blacks. The thermal imaging system, or FALAR, displayed the heat signatures of the ground, meticulously highlighting potential targets or terrain hazards. Everything was calibrated. Everything was controlled. Every pilot in the 160th trains until the aircraft becomes an extension of their own body, capable of precise movements in the most unforgiving environments. They rely on their equipment with absolute certainty. The technology does not lie. This unwavering belief in their technology is what made the upcoming encounter so profoundly unsettling. As they approached the designated landing zone, a remote, rarely used clearing deep within the back 40, the forward-looking infrared system suddenly painted a massive heat signature. Initially, the pilot assumed it was a large animal, perhaps a solitary bear, though bears are uncommon in this exact area, or a large buck. But the cease was wrong. The signature was tall, upright, and moving with an almost impossible speed for its apparent mass. The lead pilot, maintaining the protocol of not breaking silence unless absolutely necessary, made a subtle, non-verbal gesture to the co-pilot, pointing toward the thermal screen. The co-pilot confirmed the visual anomaly. The creature's movement was the first red flag. It wasn't the lumbering trot of a bear, nor the frantic bounding run of a deer. It was a bipedal sprint, low to the ground, almost like an Olympic sprinter in a crouch, but massive. On the thermal display, the creature was easily 8 feet tall when it briefly stood erect, its shoulders impossibly broad, a clear, distinct signature of a massive life form, generating immense body heat. The FALAR system, designed to detect and classify enemy troop movement, classified this simply as an unidentifiable, very large terrestrial mammal. The pilot had to make an immediate, operational decision: abort the landing zone or proceed. Aborting due to an unidentified large animal would be subject to ridicule and intense scrutiny upon landing. They proceeded to the landing zone, maintaining their altitude and speed. As they hovered, the turbulence from the rotor wash hit the clearing. The creature, which had paused at the edge of the tree line, suddenly moved with what could only be described as superhuman agility. It plunged into the dense woods, not merely running through the undergrowth, but actively crashing through it, snapping small trees. The crew chief on the starboard side, observing through his own night vision goggles, momentarily glimpsed the fleeing shape. His report, later only whispered to a trusted few, confirmed the impossible. A tall, canine-headed entity, moving with a blend of animalistic ferocity and human-like coordination. It was the Dogman, visible for only a fleeting moment, but undeniably real to the highly trained eyes of the crew chief. The landing was executed successfully, but the atmosphere inside the Black Hawk had completely changed. The routine training flight had been disrupted by an absolute contradiction of nature. The crew completed their checklists in silence, each member privately grappling with the same visual evidence. Upon returning to the hangar, the pilot filed a non-standard encounter report, euphemistically describing a large unidentified animal causing potential hazard to approach vector. The internal response was swift and predictable. The pilot was quietly debriefed. The flight logs were immediately copied and archived by a higher authority, and the unspoken order was issued. The flight log was to reflect a successful, uneventful flight. The oath of silence had been invoked. The Night Stalkers had just had their first verifiable encounter with the darkness that ruled the back 40, and the Army's priority was not investigation, but absolute suppression. The most compelling, and arguably the most terrifying, pieces of evidence regarding the Dogman in Fort Campbell's Back 40 don't come from blurry photos or frantic one-on-one encounters, but from the sterile, objective data captured by the sophisticated sensors of the Night Stalkers aircraft. Specifically, the forward-looking infrared, or FLIR, systems and the more advanced spectrally separated infrared systems provide a definitive, undeniable signature of the creature. This signature is what differentiates a frightening anecdote from a verifiable fact within the special operations community. When a pilot sees something with their own eyes on night vision goggles, NVCGs, there is always a tiny margin for human error, fatigue, or suggestion. But the FLIR displays raw heat data. It is a map of energy, impervious to fear or superstition. The Dogman signature, as quietly cataloged and shared among the most experienced Night Stalkers and 101st Airborne, First Sergeants, who believe the lore, consists of three key thermal characteristics. First is the mass and heat intensity. The creature registers on the thermal sensor as an immensely dense, high-heat signature. Its core body temperature appears significantly higher than normal woodland creatures, suggesting a high metabolism and a large muscle mass capable of generating immense power. Unlike a deer, which has a slender body profile, the Dogman's torso registers as broad and deep, often estimated to possess the lateral width of a fully grown male gorilla, even when crouched. This intensity is the primary factor that causes the automatic target recognition software in some of the newer MH-60 models to misclassify it, ultimately labeling it as unidentified large terrestrial mammal. Bipedal mode confirmed. Second is the bipedal gait and speed profile. The FLIR tracks movement over distance, calculating speed and gait vectors. The Dogman's movement pattern is its most distinct and impossible feature. The creature is frequently observed shifting from a mid-crouch pose to a fully erect bipedal stance. But even in the crouch, its speed is phenomenal, far too fast to be a man. When it moves, the thermal image shows the heat signature traveling at speeds that have been unofficially clocked at over 30 miles per hour through thick underbrush, an impossible feat for a human, or even a typical bipedal primate. Moreover, the gait analysis shows a distinctly human-like stride when standing, but one accompanied by enormous, crushing footsteps. This impossible blend of human posture and canine speed is the Dogman's thermal thumbprint. Third is the reflective eye emission. The eyes of the creature, when viewed through NVCGs, are often reported as glowing. This isn't just eye shine common to nocturnal animals. The reflection, or bioluminescence, is often described as intense, sometimes amber or blue, standing out starkly in the green monochrome. However, when viewed through the FLIR, the eyes sometimes show a thermal anomaly, a cold spot, or an unusually hot spot, suggesting a complex light-gathering structure that affects infrared energy differently than the surrounding tissue. This thermal effect, combined with the immense body mass, leads to the unsettling hypothesis that the creature may possess a biological mechanism to actively control or manipulate its visual heat signature. This would explain why seasoned soldiers sometimes see the creature only after it is already close, or why a pilot might only catch a fleeting glimpse of it before it vanishes into the background thermal noise. The quiet consensus among the Night Stalkers is that the Dogman is a genuine biological entity, not a ghost or a spirit, but an elusive, highly intelligent apex predator. Their technology has ruled out all known species in the land. Between the lakes area, it is too heavy to be a coyote, too large to be a deer, and its movement is too coordinated to be a hog. The Dogman signature is the thermal proof of an unaugmented bipedal canine, 8 to 9 feet tall, an entity that requires a complete reevaluation of the American wilderness. The ultimate secret that the military is trying to suppress is not just a monster story. but the fact that their most advanced surveillance technology has confirmed the existence of a cryptid, thereby validating the horrifying ancient legends of the Shawnee people. This objective, cold data from the Feliar screens, is the most powerful piece of evidence, forcing the pilots to break their vow of silence, even if only in whispers. The training town of Cassidy is a familiar, if eerie, landmark deep inside Fort Campbell's back 40. It's a makeshift urban combat training site, composed of rough concrete shacks and temporary wooden structures, designed to simulate the contested village overseas. After dark, with no activity other than the low humming presence of the base's generators, Cassidy becomes a ghostly, unsettling place. For the Night Stalkers, however, it often serves a mundane but critical purpose, a forward arming and refueling point, or FARP. These stops are necessary to extend mission endurance during long-duration, no-go condition flights. It was during one such stop that a MH-47 Chinook crew experienced their second and perhaps most terrifying close encounter. The Chinook, a massive tandem-rotor transport helicopter, had been running a complicated insertion and extraction exercise for the 5th Special Forces Group. The flight required a mid-mission refueling, and Cassidy was the chosen point. Landing the huge aircraft in the minimal light required intense focus, the pilots relying entirely on the visual input from their envoys and the detailed instructions from the crew chiefs guiding them down. The refueling process itself is a choreographed dance. Fuel lines are rapidly connected, internal tanks are topped off, and security is established with perimeter checks, all under the severe constraint of absolute radio silence and light discipline. The crew chiefs, master sergeants with decades of experience, moved with practiced efficiency. The first anomaly was not visual, but olfactory. As the crew chiefs disembarked and began to handle the heavy fuel lines, they were hit by a pervasive, sickening odor. It was distinct and unmistakable, a smell that had been whispered about in the barracks, but never officially confirmed by a Night Stalkers crew. The stench of wet dog, but multiplied. A powerful, overwhelming musk that suggested immense size and foulness. The odor was so intense, it cut through the smell of jet fuel and the metallic tang of the helicopters. This sensory overload immediately put the crew on high alert. They had landed in the woods countless times, and no known animal of the region, not even a pack of coyotes or a solitary hog, produced an odor of this magnitude. The security perimeter was quickly reinforced. One crew chief, circling the rear of the Chinook with his M4 in the ready position, saw the thermal spike on his handheld thermal monocular, a device often used for ground security. A shape registered just beyond the tree line, approximately 30 meters away. Unlike the previous sighting from altitude, this was a clear ground-level profile. The shape was massive and still, registered a phenomenal amount of heat, and was partially obscured by the dense underbrush. It was low, hunkered down, suggesting an apex predator waiting to strike. The crew chief pursues, his training momentarily overridden by the sheer primal fear the sight induced. He described the moment later as watching a thermal shadow, a creature of pure heat and muscle, silently observing their every move. The Chinook, a symbol of military might, suddenly felt exposed and vulnerable. The man did not raise an alarm, fearing a panicked reaction might provoke the entity. Instead, he used a prearranged hand signal to the refueling point non-commissioned officer, indicating unidentified large threat, potential danger. The signal was clear: speed up the processes. The refueling took place in a state of hyper-awareness, every shadow and sound scrutinized. As the fuel line was disconnected and the pilots prepared for immediate takeoff, the creature made its move. It did not charge surge. Rather, it began a parallel rapid sprint through the woods, its immense weight evidenced by the deep thudding sounds and the loud crashing of broken branches. The 160th crew chief confirmed the Dogman signature. bipedal movement, impossible speed through thick terrain, and an exit trajectory that suggested intelligence. It was running away from the sound of the approaching Chinook's rotors, but maintaining its distance. Upon return to the main base, the crew chief, still shaken by the close proximity of the encounter and the overwhelming smell, filed a detailed, though discreet, report to his flight lead. Like the previous incident, the logs were secured, the details were scrubbed from the official record, and the crew was debriefed under strict non-disclosure. The consensus was clear. The creature was actively hunting and observing their operations. The fuel stop at Cassidy had confirmed that the Dogman was not a rare, fleeting phantom, but a territorial threat, operating within the very heart of the elite training area. The 160th continued to fly, but the routine stops at Cassidy would never feel the same. The silence remained, but the fear was now a shared visceral reality among those who flew the darkness. For the soldiers of Fort Campbell, particularly the ground troops of the 101st Airborne, the closest and most chilling encounters with the Dogman occur when they rely on the ubiquitous night vision goggles, or infrared. These devices, often the PSQ-20s or similar generations, amplify ambient light, turning the total darkness of the back 40 into a grainy, luminous green landscape. The irony is that the technology designed to give them a tactical edge against human enemies often serves as a lens to confirm the existence of a purely mythological 8-foot monster. The visual descriptions provided by these combat-hardened soldiers are remarkably consistent, providing a terrifying composite sketch of the creature. The key to the NVEC's accounts is the element of surprise and proximity. Unlike the air crews, the ground troops are often stationary, pulling fire watch or security details in dug-in positions near the wood line. One infantry squad leader, positioned just 10 to 15 meters from his soldiers, described the encounter around midnight with no moon. He was used to hearing the platoon radio operator, the RTOEO, walking back and forth behind his position. Then, he heard something different. Footsteps that were a lot slower in movement, and then a subtle, low growling, like a dog or wolf. He turned and immediately utilized his NVGs, flipping down the goggles. What he saw was a creature in a mid-crouch pose, about 20 meters away. His initial reaction was profound fear and confusion. He was paralyzed with confusion and fear for a terrifying 10 to 12 seconds. He was close enough to observe critical details. The creature stood at least 5 feet tall, while crouched over, sinking lower and lower to the ground. When it finally fled, the soldier flipped his NVGs to thermal mode and saw the distinct outline running diagonally and booking it in a low stance. The creature ran too fast to be a man and was too big to be a deer, especially since it was fully standing up as it was crashing through the brush. Another soldier, pulling guard with a buddy near a road, provided an even more detailed description of the fully upright creature. After his buddy was accosted near a storm drain pipe, the soldier aimed his NVGCs across the street toward the exit of the drain pipe. There, 75 meters away, stood what could only be described as a legit Dogman. It was estimated to be 8 to 9 feet tall. The head was distinctly canine, the body wolf-like, and it was standing on its hind legs. He noticed its broad shoulders, and, crucially, the ears, pointy and large, almost elfish-like. The most consistent and unsettling detail across all NVG reports is the eyes. Multiple witnesses report that under the light amplification of the goggles, the creature's eyes were glowing. This isn't just a faint eye shine, but an intense reflective glare that stands out in the darkness. This glowing effect under NVGCs is a powerful visual marker, a feature that distinguishes the Dogman from conventional, terrestrial free apex predators and adds a layer of supernatural terror to the physical encounters. The profound psychological impact of these sightings is immediately apparent in the soldiers' reactions. They are trained to engage targets, yet faced with the impossible, they freeze. Their training, which prepares them for human threats and known terrain, offers no protocol for Dogman. The creature, too, displays intelligence and caution. It often retreats when a clear threat is presented, as when the soldier fired a burst of sim rounds. The NVG accounts strip away all doubt, providing indisputable visual confirmation to multiple, highly trained military personnel that the 8-foot bias is real, actively patrols the back 40, and is capable of both observing and physically interacting with the soldiers. The terrifying reality of the Dogman encounters in Fort Campbell's back 40 gains a deeper, darker context when examined through the lens of ancient Native American folklore and the tragic history of the land itself. For the soldiers, the creature is a cryptid, an unexplained animal. But for the original inhabitants of the region, the Shawnee, the Cherokee, and the Chickasaw, the monster is a powerful, vengeful spirit tied directly to the earth and the trauma inflicted upon it. This entity, often referred to as the Loop Guru, is not a biological anomaly. It is a spiritual warning. The term Loop Guru originates with the Shawnee people and was shared with French trappers and frontiersmen during the early days of colonization. The Shawnee legend speaks of a medicine man who gained the ability to transform himself into a wolf. However, he began to abuse this immense power, utilizing his shape-shifting ability for malevolent purposes. As a result of his misuse, the medicine man was killed while still trapped in his wolf form. The legend holds that his vengeful spirit was unable to rest and continues to roam the woods of the region. This spirit, the Loop Guru, served as the original inspiration for the Rougarou of Cajun folklore, a werewolf-like creature said to stalk the swamps and forests far to the south. The connection between the Loop Guru and the modern Dogman sightings is profoundly disturbing. The creature's description, towering, bipedal canine, with immense strength and predatory intelligence, aligns closely with the legend. The physical encounter with the creature often involves a low, subtle growling, like a Jaeger wolf. More chillingly, the Dogman is also reported to produce a loud, guttural noise, a terrifying howl that causes all other animals, including local coyotes, to instantly fall silent. This sound, the creature's signature terrifying cry, could be interpreted as the howl of the imprisoned, vengeful medicine man, the true cry of the Loop Guru. This ancient legend gains immense significance due to the historical geography of Fort Campbell. The area is tragically intersected by the Trail of Tears, the devastating path of forced relocation that drove thousands of Native Americans from their ancestral lands in the 1830s. One soldier from the 101st Airborne noted the widespread rumor among the troops about skinwalkers and old Native American spirits haunting the back 40, specifically mentioning that the Trail of Tears ran right through the base. Furthermore, the area is rumored to contain tons of unmarked graves of those who perished during the relocation, graves that the Army has intentionally ignored or failed to address. The implication is that the back 40 is not just an active military installation. It is a cursed, desecrated cemetery. The lack of respect shown to the fallen and the forced displacement of the original inhabitants are seen in local and indigenous lore as acts that activate the malevolent forces dormant in the land. The Dogman, the Loop Guru, may thus be viewed as a spiritual entity, a guardian, or a curse that manifests to reject the military's presence. The intense, primal fear that paralyzes even combat-hardened soldiers in the presence of the creature suggests an encounter not just with an animal, but with a force of nature driven by spiritual vengeance and historical trauma. The silence imposed by the military hierarchy is not just to control information, but to deny the very real, very present historical wound that continues to bleed its terror into the Kentucky and Tennessee wilderness. The land remembers, and the Loop Guru is the terrifying voice of that memory. The deepest, most profound explanation for the unsettling phenomena observed in Fort Campbell's Back 40 lies not in cryptid biology, but in the desecration of sacred ground. The vast expanse of the training area, particularly the remote and desolate regions, is intimately connected to one of the most tragic and shameful episodes in American history, the Trail of Tears. This forced removal of thousands of Native Americans from their homelands in the southeastern United States during the 1830s saw the suffering, death, and displacement of entire nations, including the Cherokee, Chickasaw, and Muskogee. Historical records and local knowledge confirm that portions of this devastating route cut directly through the land that now constitutes Fort Campbell. The trauma of the Trail of Tears left an indelible mark on the landscape. Along the way, those who succumbed to starvation, disease, and exposure were often buried hastily and without ceremony, their graves unmarked and eventually swallowed by the wilderness. For the soldiers of the 101st Airborne, this tragic history is not abstract. They are the ones who spend weeks digging fighting positions, sleeping, and maneuvering directly over this unhallowed ground. Rumors are rampant among the troops that there are tons of unmarked graves scattered throughout the Back 40, remnants of the journey that the Army, through or sheer bureaucratic negligence, has chosen to ignore. This alleged intentional disregard for the hundreds of family cemeteries and individual graves is, in the context of Native American beliefs, a profound act of spiritual violation. Many indigenous traditions hold that, when the dead are not properly buried or honored, their spirits become restless and often vengeful. The land itself is seen as an entity that remembers the injustices wrought upon it. The belief is prevalent among some soldiers that the spectral and terrifying encounters, the skinwalkers, the unexplained UFO phenomena, and most powerfully, the Dogman are direct manifestations of this historical curse. The Dogman, as the purported Loop Guruth vengeful spirit of the Shawnee medicine manis, often viewed as the guardian spirit of this violated land, its massive, terrifying appearances are not random acts of predation, but territorial warnings. When the military runs its massive, noisy training exercises, the explosions, the live fire, the helicopter low passes, they are not just disturbing the flora and fauna. They are actively disturbing the resting places of the dead and provoking the ancient spirits tasked with guarding the sacred earth. This spiritual conflict provides a chilling explanation for why the creature targets soldiers with such apparent intent, as seen in the story of the soldier who was grabbed and nearly pulled into a storm drain pipe. Furthermore, the displacement caused by development in the region, particularly the construction of the two large man-made lakes that form the land between the lakes, LBO, National Recreation Area, further solidified this feeling of ancestral dispossession. Families were forced to relocate, losing their homes and communities, all while their family cemeteries remained in the area, a physical reminder of what they lost. This repeated cycle of removal and disregard has, in the local folklore, amplified the power of the beast, making it locally known as the beast of the land between the lakes. The Army's response, the imposed oath of silence, is not just about operational security. It is a denial of the spiritual reality of the land. By refusing to acknowledge the possibility of a historical curse or a vengeful guardian, the military attempts to maintain a rational, controllable environment. But the 101st and the 160th know the truth. They have faced the 8-foot, glowing-eyed biped that is the living embodiment of the land's sorrow and rage. The unmarked graves of the Trail of Tears serve as the perpetual, peonage source of the Back 40's curse, making every routine training mission a terrifying, involuntary encounter with a dark history that the United States government wishes to forget. The paranormal activity surrounding Fort Campbell is not confined solely to terrestrial cryptids like the Dogman. The base and its proximity to the land between the lakes region has long been a notorious hotbed for unexplained aerial phenomena, or UFOs. This confluence of cryptids and unidentified flying objects suggests that the Back 40 is not merely cursed, but sits on a geological or energetic nexus, a paranormal crossroads that attracts entities from both the physical and unknown dimensions. For the Night Stalkers, this means their mandate to maintain secrecy extends far beyond monster sightings. It includes the active suppression of data concerning advanced non-human technology operating in their airspace. The most historically significant and chilling UFO incident linked to the Fort Campbell area occurred just after World War II, in 1948. This event, known as the Mantell Incident, involved Air Force Captain Thomas Mantell, who was killed while chasing an object over the state of Kentucky. While Mantell's pursuit ended tragically with the crash of his F-51 Mustang, the key detail for the Fort Campbell area is the simultaneous, multiple sightings of weird egg-shaped objects and other things reported by military personnel around Kentucky on that very same day. This suggests a concentration of activity directly over or near the military installation, indicating a persistent interest from these objects in the base's operations or location. Decades later, in the 1980s, the proximity of these unexplained aerial vehicles was confirmed by an Army police officer stationed at Fort Campbell. The officer reported a terrifying chase involving Shook helicopters pursuing a rammed diamond-shaped craft. The craft, maneuvering with speeds and angles impossible for human-piloted aircraft, reportedly demonstrated hostile capability by frying one of the base's radio towers. This incident, confirmed by military witnesses, points to an intelligent, technologically superior force operating in direct defiance of the Army's control over its own airspace. The Night Stalkers, the elite aviators of the 160th Air, uniquely positioned to track and record these phenomena. Their mission profiles require them to fly at extremely low altitudes under no-go conditions, placing them directly beneath the flight paths of these silent, high-speed objects. Their helicopters are equipped with the most advanced radar and thermal imaging systems available, systems designed to discern stealth technology. When a pilot from the 160th reports a UFO, it carries a much higher degree of credibility than civilian testimony. Yet these reports are the most fiercely suppressed by the military command. The suppression of the UFO reports serves a crucial strategic purpose. If the military admits that unknown crafts are violating the airspace above a critical special operations base, it implies a catastrophic failure of national defense. By combining the Dogman encounters with the UFO sightings, the Army can use the cryptid aspect of the monster story as a smokescreen. The official line is to dismiss all paranormal reports as folklore, mass hysteria, or stress-induced hallucinations. This strategy effectively covers up the much more pressing and potentially disastrous implication of extraterrestrial or high-tech intrusion into Fort Campbell's operations. Ultimately, the UFO nexus adds a layer of interdimensional or extraterrestrial terror to the already fraught environment of the Back 40. It suggests that the Dogman might be more than just a creature of folklore or a biological anomaly. It could be part of a localized larger phenomenon, a spiritual guardian, a biological experiment, or perhaps even an animal imported or influenced by the presence of these advanced, wasty visitors. The fact that the military prioritizes suppressing the 1948 and 1980 incidents alongside the Dogman sightings confirms that, for the commanders at Fort Campbell, the two mysteries are inextricably and frighteningly linked to one of the most concrete pieces of evidence suggesting non-terrestrial intelligence actively monitoring Fort Campbell and its back 40 occurred during the 1980s, an incident that transcends mere lights in the sky and involves a direct physical confrontation with the base's infrastructure. This encounter was reported by an Army police officer, a witness whose profession demands meticulous observation and strict adherence to factual reporting. The incident involved a pursuit of a Rommel diamond-shaped craft, a geometric and technological anomaly that defied conventional flight characteristics. The event unfolded during a time when Fort Campbell was heavily engaged in routine, large-scale training exercises, likely involving significant air assets, including the helicopters of the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment. According to the officer's testimony, the Rommel craft was observed in the vicinity of the base, maneuvering in a manner that was clearly impossible for any known aircraft of the era. The craft's movement was silent, swift, and marked by impossible changes in velocity and direction, characteristics often associated with advanced propulsion systems that ignore inertia. The terrifying climax of this chase involved military aircraft, specifically Chinook helicopters, which may have been Black Hawks or Chinooks from the 160th, attempting to intercept or shadow the intruder. The stakes were immediately raised when the diamond-shaped craft allegedly demonstrated a clear capability to interfere with military technology. The object reportedly passed near one of Fort Campbell's crucial radio towers, resulting in the tower being fried. This suggests the craft emitted an intense electromagnetic pulse, or EMP, or some other form of directed energy that rendered the communications infrastructure inoperable. This was not a passive sighting. It was an act of technological intimidation and a direct violation of U.S. military space. The implications of the 80s incident were catastrophic for the base's command. A loss of a radio tower due to a conventional strike is a tactical problem. A loss due to a silent, diamond-shaped craft maneuvering with impunity is an existential threat. The incident strongly supports the belief that the mysterious objects are not only interested in the base, but possess defensive or offensive capabilities that far exceed the Army's ability to counter them. This incident, occurring on or near the perimeter of the back 40, further solidified the base's reputation as a paranormal magnet that attracts the high-tech unknown, alongside the ancient terrestrial horror of the Dogman. For the Night Stalkers, this event reinforced their culture of absolute secrecy regarding both airborne and ground-level anomalies. The pilots of the 160th are trained to recognize and report any unusual aerial activity, yet the official narrative surrounding the 80s incident was undoubtedly a cover-up, minimizing the threat and attributing the damage to a benign source or mechanical failure. This creates a dangerous operational environment where the elite aviators are forced to acknowledge a real, persistent threat that their own command structure officially denies. The proximity of this high-tech UFO activity to the area of the Dogman sightings is what truly establishes the Back 40 as a nexus. Whether the Dogman is an indigenous creature whose habitat is protected by the UFO presence, or if the creature itself is somehow linked to the objects, perhaps a biological entity dropped, influenced, or monitored by the Rommel craft. The combination of phenomena is too frequent to be coincidental. The 1980s radio tower incident serves as a chilling reminder that the military is not only battling ancient folklore, but also highly advanced, technologically superior entities in the deep woods of Kentucky and Tennessee. The diamond-shaped craft of the 80s remains one of the darkest, most undeniable secrets held within Fort Campbell's classified files. The silence enforced by the military concerning the Dogman and UFO sightings is absolute at the operational level. But the nature of a sprawling military installation ensures that the truth leaks out in unexpected ways. One of the most compelling and often overlooked sources of information comes from the periphery of the action. The air traffic controllers, ATCCs, and support staff who manage the flow of aircraft and communications across the base, particularly during large-scale exercises like Operation Lethal Eagle 3. These individuals are trained observers, responsible for logging all non-standard events, and their testimonies, though usually kept off the official record, add a crucial layer of confirmation to the pilot's whispered accounts. The air traffic controllers are the ears of the base. They monitor the radio traffic, the subtle shifts in pilots' voices, and the unexpected deviations from flight plans. During the massive field training exercises, the ATCs are often attached to the command post, or CP, enduring long, isolated night shifts. One such individual, an air traffic controller attached to the 3rd Brigade Combat Team, described the utter boredom of being on night shift, with nothing to do after the main staff had returned to the rear. This boredom, a common enemy of the soldier, led him and a buddy to sneak out and explore the abandoned training villages of the Back 40. Their act of going off limits placed them directly into the environment where the cryptids thrive. They snuck past the road guard and headed toward a nearby cluster of 6 wooden huts and 6 concrete shacks, a completely abandoned training village. These forgotten sites are notorious within the local military community for being eerie, dilapidated structures where the atmosphere is palpably unsettling. The ATC and his buddy, utilizing their red light headlamps, were immediately struck by the silence and the pervasive sense of dread. The encounter happened at one of the abandoned wooden huts. The door was hanging open slightly, a jarring break in the oppressive silence. As his friend reached out to push the door further open, the terrifying and unexplainable occurred. The entire back wall of the wooden shack starts to shake, and they heard a very loud kicking of the gravel for a few moments. This sudden, violent physical event was followed by an eerie silence. Upon pushing the door fully open, they discovered the room was empty, save for a massive, disturbing piece of physical evidence. One area had a large amount of the gravel moved to reveal a patch of fresh dirt, and the back wall had a massive hole in it. Below the hole was a rut, suggesting something had violently scraped its way past the wall multiple times, much like a powerful digging animal. Immediately after this discovery, the physical evidence was followed by the creature itself. Turning quickly, they saw the outline in the moonlight, what at first appeared to be a large, really strong-looking man. But then the terrifying truth emerged. It had a canine wolf-like head, with reflective eyes staring back at us. The creature's build was massive, ruling out any conventional coyote. The profound primal fear experienced by the air traffic controller was immense, like nothing I've ever experienced in my life. This testimony, coming from a highly disciplined technical operator like an air traffic controller, is highly significant. It confirms that the Dogman not only exists in the remote wilderness, but actively seeks out and interacts with the structures of the military training villages. Furthermore, it confirms the creature's massive physical power and the chilling detail of the reflective eyes seen in the moonlight. These whispers from the cockpit and the support staff serve as an invaluable corroboration, proving that the creatures of the Back 40 are a clear and present danger to every soldier and airman at Fort Campbell, regardless of their role. For the Night Stalkers of the 160th, the pinnacle of danger and technical skill is the low-altitude extraction, the rapid recovery of ground forces or personnel from hostile or inaccessible terrain. This maneuver demands absolute precision, often executed with the helicopter hovering just feet above the tree line in minimal visibility. A third documented encounter circulated in hushed tones among warrant officers, describes an extraction gone horribly wrong in the deepest, most remote section of the Back 40, proving the Dogman is a direct threat to high-value military missions. The mission was a training extraction involving a simulated hostage recovery team from the 5th Special Forces Group. The team was located in a densely wooded area, characterized by tall thorn bushes and extremely thick undergrowth, terrain so difficult that navigating it on foot was like trying to walk through a giant broom. As one infantry soldier described similar conditions, the extraction required the MH-60 Blackhawk to hold a stable hover, while the ground team secured the hoist cables. The pilots, viewing the area through their VTGs and FLIR, were focused entirely on maintaining their position, fighting the subtle, disorienting effects of the night and the turbulence. As the hoist was deployed, the pilot's thermal sensors immediately registered an aggressive, rapidly moving thermal signature approaching the landing zone. The Sightings of the signature instantly classified it as non-human and non-standard. The creature was utilizing the almost impenetrable undergrowth as cover, moving through the 10-foot-tall thorn bushes with an ease that defied the environment. It wasn't slowed down. It was crashing through with incredible force, snapping branches and knocking down smaller trees, its path marked by a chaotic, powerful disturbance in the thermal display. The ground team, already secured to the hoist line, was the direct target. One of the Special Forces operators, moments before being lifted, witnessed the creature break through the final barrier of brush. He described it as a massive upright entity with a discernible canine head, standing easily 8 feet tall. The operator, a man trained for extreme stress, was overwhelmed not by fear of an enemy, but by the sheer biological impossibility of the sighting. He immediately radioed a short, panicked report to the command post, violating radio silence, with a code word indicating an unscheduled, catastrophic threat. The Night Stalkers pilot, recognizing the extreme danger, executed an emergency hot extraction, rapidly pulling the helicopter out of the hover. The violent upward surge was necessary to save the ground team, but it meant the recovery was uncontrolled and chaotic. The thermal signature of the creature was last seen making a powerful leap, demonstrating an unbelievable vertical trajectory that suggested it was attempting to grab the dangling hoist cable or the men themselves. The sheer terror of the event led to the entire training exercise being immediately terminated, with the ground team reporting psychological distress and non-standard injury due to the emergency maneuver. The aftermath was a flurry of classified activity. The FLIR data from the helicopter, which captured the creature's impossible movement and final aggressive leap, was immediately seized by a high-ranking officer. The ground team was subjected to intense, separate debriefings, where they were forced to sanitize their report, attributing the creature to a large, aggressive bear, or simply a malfunction of the night vision equipment. This incident served as the most direct confirmation to the high command. The Dogman of the Back 40 is not only real, but is intelligent enough to target military personnel during critical special operations training. The official line held firm silence, but within the 160th, the third encounter became the terrifying gold standard of the creature's power. The Dogman encounters in the Back 40 are typically defined by visual confirmation through advanced technology, the thermal spikes on FLIR, or the glowing eyes seen through NVECs. However, some of the most visceral and psychologically damaging reports come from a non-visual sensory experience: the creature's overwhelming, sickening odor. This olfactory signature, consistently described as the stench of a wet dog, but magnified to an unbearable degree, is often the first indication that a soldier is not merely alone in the woods, but is in the immediate proximity of the cryptid. This sensory overload breaks through the military's imposed rationality and confirms the primal, physical reality of the threat. For the ground troops who spend their field training exercises, FTXs, dug into the dirt, the smell is a terrifying, inescapable alarm. One squad leader, during his midnight fire watch, reported hearing loud, deep sniffing noises near his position. What followed was the terrifying, accompanying sensory detail. His soldiers were saying that they could smell what resembled a wet dog smell. This wasn't the faint odor of a passing animal. It was an intense, musky, foul stench that quickly pervaded the air, suggesting the creature was mere meters away, actively investigating their position. This phenomenon is not unique to the ground troops. As detailed in the account of the MH-47 Chinook crew, during their fuel stop at the training village of Cassidy, the crew chiefs were hit by a pervasive, sickening odor as they disembarked to handle the fuel lines. They described the stench as an overwhelming musk that was powerful enough to cut through the heavy smell of jet fuel, confirming that the creature's size and proximity generated an odor of phenomenal magnitude. This sensory detail, the wet dog smell, has become a crucial part of the Dogman's signature, as reliable as bipedal gait on thermal imaging. The psychological impact of the smell is immense. Military personnel are trained to handle extreme stress, but the sense of smell is profoundly linked to the brain's emotional and memory centers. To smell the creature, a smell that is clearly non-human, non-bear, and non-hokis, to experience the monster in an intensely intimate and undeniable way. It bypasses the intellectual filter and hits the soldier with pure, primal fear. When the smell is coupled with the sound of heavy sniffing, as reported by the infantrymen, it transforms the unseen presence into an active, breathing, and potentially hostile entity that is close enough to attack. Furthermore, the physical characteristics implied by the smell contribute to the hypothesis that the Dogman is a highly evolved, indigenous apex predator. The intensity suggests a massive mammalian body with a high metabolism, perhaps utilizing scent marking or relying on the powerful odor to intimidate or disorient prey. The specific wet dog nature of the scent reinforces the creature's canine morphology, linking the modern military encounters back to the ancient Native American legends of the Loop, Guruth medicine man, trapped forever in his wolf form. The smell, therefore, is one of the secrets that the Army finds hardest to suppress. While thermal logs can be erased and eyewitness accounts dismissed, the shared visceral memory of that overpowering stench persists among the troops. It serves as a constant, terrifying reminder that even when the creature is not visible, it is near, it is massive, and it is actively hunting in the darkness of the back 40. The 502nd Infantry Regiment, a component of the 101st Airborne Division, often finds itself on the front lines of the paranormal activity within the back 40. Their missions involve sustained long-duration ground patrols, clearing sectors, and establishing defensive lines activities that place them on the ground and deep in the creature's alleged territory for extended periods. The experiences of the soldiers from the 502nd are particularly significant because they demonstrate the creature's intelligent avoidance of direct military confrontation, yet its persistent, terrifying psychological harassment. One soldier from the 1st Battalion, 502nd Infantry Regiment, recounted his experience during a situation training exercise, or STX, that took place over several days. After securing a mock training town, his platoon was pushed out to the wood line to set up a defensive perimeter. The conditions were miserable. It started pissing on us as soon as we get into the woods, creating a damp, exhausting environment where focus was difficult. It was in this state of combined fatigue and annoyance that the encounter occurred. The patrol established a position running perpendicular to a ditch, using a line of trees for cover. The squad leader and the soldier were co-located, waiting out the rain. Their platoon radio operator, the RTCO, walked by to swap batteries for the handheld radio SOS, a brief, known disturbance. About 20 or 30 minutes passed, and they heard the footsteps again. They were weighted footsteps, suggesting a heavy individual, so they assumed it was the RTO returning. They waited for him to speak, but the only sound was an unnerving silence. Then came the auditory and sensory confirmation of the threat. They heard what the soldier could only describe as heavy sniffing sounds from behind us, sounding like a hound dog trying to find something. The sounds moved. First, it came from a few meters behind the squad leader on the right, and then they heard the sound of crunching leaves and more sniffing, moving between the soldier and his assistant gunner. The creature was silently, methodically circling, using the cover of the woods to survey its potential prey. The gunner and the soldier, now startled and fully alert, brought up their night vision goggles. Just as they did, they heard the creature barrel into the ditch on our right and speeds down deeper into the woods. They only caught the sound of its rapid, powerful escape, but the evidence was clear. Whatever that thing was, it was way too heavy sounding to be a coyote. Crucially, the soldier noted that its footsteps sounded more like someone or something sprinting on 2 legs instead of 4, which instantly ruled out hogs, skunks, or any other normal 4-legged animal common to the Kentucky woods. The consensus was immediate and chilling. Damn, maybe we just saw something people called the Dogman. This reaction confirms that the legend is an active part of the infantryman's lore in the 502nd, and that the creature actively harasses patrols, moving with intelligent caution and immense speed. The patrol had been watched, smelled, and circled by the bipedal beast. Their forced silence about the encounter only deepened the psychological strain, adding a terrifying, unacknowledged adversary to their list of operational threats in the dark and dangerous woods of the Back 40. The local legend of the Dogman in the Fort Campbell and Land Between the Lakes area is often viewed as an indigenous phenomenon, tied to the Loop Guru folklore and the history of the Trail of Tears. However, the horrifying characteristics and physical description of the creature witnessed by the soldiers bear a striking resemblance to a much older, regionally distinct cryptid from the north, the Michigan Dogman. This connection suggests a terrifying possibility that the Dogman phenomenon is not localized, but is a wide-ranging species or spiritual entity haunting the remote wilderness across the American continent, sharing a single terrifying blueprint of horror. The notoriety of the Dogman as a modern cryptid really began to surface in the late 1970s or early 1980s, specifically with the gruesome story of a family visiting from Florida who were allegedly found torn to pieces in their RV in the Land Between the Lakes National Recreation Area. However, the origins of the creature's legend are much older. One of the first documented encounters with a dog-faced humanoid creature took place far north in 1887 in Wexford County, Michigan. In that Michigan incident, 2 lumberjacks reportedly witnessed a creature that they described as a 7-foot-tall monster with a dog's head and the torso of a man, standing and walking upright on its 2 hind legs. Crucially, they noted its eyes were either blue or amber, and that its howl sounded like that of a human. Since then, numerous sightings have been reported throughout Michigan, particularly in the northwest Lower Peninsula, leading to the creature being locally known as the Michigan Dogman. The parallels between the Michigan accounts and the sightings in the Fort Campbell Back 40 are chillingly consistent. Both descriptions involve a creature that stands bipedally, is immensely tall, 7 to 9 feet, possesses a distinctly canine or wolf-like head, and moves with abnormal speed and strength. The observation by the Fort Campbell soldier of the creature's pointy and large, almost elfish-like ears, and its reflective eyes strongly echoes the early Michigan descriptions of its appearance. This geographical consistency suggests that the soldiers of the 502nd Infantry and the elite pilots of the 160th are encountering the same terrifying entity that has haunted the American wilderness for over a century. If the Dogman is a genuine, undocumented animal, then the Back 40 is one of its key habitats, a vast, protected, and largely unmonitored area of forest and lakes, perfect for an apex predator to thrive. If, however, the creature is a spiritual or cursed entity, the consistency suggests that the Trail of Tears and the Loop Guru legend are regional manifestations of a continental curse, activated by the same pattern of colonial displacement and disrespect for the land. For the military command at Fort Campbell, the existence of the creature is a local problem to be suppressed, but by linking the Dogman sightings to the documented terror of the Michigan Dogman, the scope of the threat immediately broadens. It transforms the unsettling local rumors into evidence of a pervasive, long-standing menace that operates with impunity across state lines, demonstrating that the terror haunting the Back 40 is a fundamental, terrifying feature of the American wild. The Michigan connection is the missing piece of the puzzle, proving that Fort Campbell is merely the latest chapter in a century of horror. Within the military structure of Fort Campbell, particularly among the non-commissioned officers, NCOs, who have spent years navigating the operational demands of the Back 40, there exists an unofficial, internal lore regarding the Dogman and other strange phenomena. The first sergeant, the highest-ranking enlisted member of a company or unit, often acts as the unacknowledged gatekeeper of this secret knowledge. Their public role is to enforce the official oath of silence and maintain a facade of rational, controlled operations. Their private role, however, is to quietly educate and warn their most trusted soldiers about the very real dangers that exist beyond the scope of military training. One soldier recounted the predictable aftermath of a close encounter. They were called into the first sergeant's office, where the instruction was clear to keep it to ourselves and to never say anything about it to anyone. This suppression is necessary to prevent mass panic, maintain the unit's mental readiness, and avoid the catastrophic loss of training time that would result from acknowledging a cryptid. Yet the narrative doesn't end with denial. In many instances, the first sergeant uses these private sessions not to dismiss the experience, but to contextualize it within the local legends. This unofficial sharing of lore and warning is often what prevents the soldiers from completely losing their sanity. For example, when one soldier mentioned their Dogman sighting, their first sergeant was super into the lore, I guess you'd call it. This ACO proceeded to give the soldier a huge backstory on Dogman, detailing the creature's origins and its presence in the land between the lakes area. The first sergeant even mentioned stuff about how the Native Americans were pushed off the land between the lakes area to settle it, only for them to then curse it, and some other crazy-sounding stuff. This internal, unsanctioned education serves a dual purpose. First, it provides a necessary psychological release for the soldier, validating their terrifying experience by confirming that they are not suffering from an individual delusion. By giving the monster a name and a historical context to a text, the Loop Guru and the Trail of Tears, the first sergeant transforms the unidentified threat into a known, if terrifying, entity. Second, it serves as an operational warning. The first sergeant, through the guise of sharing crazy-sounding stuff, is effectively telling the soldier, the creature is real, it is aggressive, and you must maintain a higher state of alert than the official regulations demand. The first sergeant's secret is the acknowledgement that even the most advanced military organization is powerless against the ancient, spiritual forces that haunt the Back 40. They understand that the Dogman operates by a different set of rules, is attracted to the very training and technology the Army employs, and that the only true defense is extreme caution and adherence to the unspoken rules of the wilderness. This hidden layer of operational reality, the blend of official doctrine and terrifying folklores, the essence of the Fort Campbell experience. The first sergeant is the reluctant mediator between the world of military logic and the terrifying, undeniable paranormal forces that rule the darkness. The Dogman encounters often occur in the deep woods of the Back 40, but the final story of terror takes place in a location seemingly designed to be safer: a deserted military training village. These mock villages, constructed of modular wooden and concrete structures, are meant to simulate hostile urban environments, yet in their abandonment, they become magnets for the strange and the squatters. One of the most recent and chilling incidents involves two soldiers, an air traffic controller and his buddy, who, seeking refuge from boredom during a massive field training exercise, chose to explore one of these dilapidated, forgotten sites. The soldiers, attached to the command post during Operation Lethal Eagle 3, snuck past the road guard and arrived at a collection of 6 wooden huts and 6 concrete shacks. The buildings were completely abandoned, the whole place giving the ATCC a profound sense of the creeps. The tall, overgrown grass and the dilapidated structures added to the oppressive atmosphere. While most of the doors were locked, one wooden hut's door was hanging open just a bit, an inviting anomaly in the silence that immediately drew their attention. They felt an unshakable feeling that something was inside of it. As one of the soldiers reached to push the door further open, the terrifying and violent reaction occurred. The entire back wall of the wooden shack starts to shake, followed by the loud, distinct sound of gravel being kicked for a few moments. They both immediately jumped back, bracing themselves for a charge from a person or animal. When the hut went silent, the friend cautiously pushed the door fully open, revealing an empty room. However, the physical evidence left behind was undeniable and deeply unsettling. They noticed a spot inside where a large amount of gravel had been moved to expose a patch of fresh dirt, and the back wall had a massive hole in it. Below the hole, there was a rut, a scrape mark that looked like something had dug or scraped its way past this wall multiple times, much like a large, powerful animal trying to get under a foundation. This physical proof, this display of immense, destructive power, instantly induced panic. The soldier froze, the hair on the back of his neck standing up. The physical evidence was quickly followed by the visual terror. They heard something rustling in the tall grass outside the door behind them and quickly turned. In the moonlight, they could see the outline of a large, strong-looking figure, mostly hidden in the grass. But the head was exposed, and it was the terrifying, undeniable profile of a canine wolf-like head, with reflective eyes staring back at us. They knew immediately this was no coyote. The creature was built like that. The creature was silent, simply watching them. When the soldier's buddy stomped forward and raised his arms to scare it off, the massive biped barely flinched, only slightly dropping its head back below the top of the grass. The soldiers understood this chilling message. The creature was not afraid. They knew they needed to leave immediately, retreating quickly and quietly, with the burning sensation of being watched clinging to them for the entire walk back to the command post. This final, intimate encounter in the abandoned village confirms that the Dogman is intelligent, unafraid of humans, and an active territorial presence, utilizing the very structures the Army built to further its haunting of Fort Campbell. The most devastating consequence of the Dogman encounters in the Back 40 is not physical injury, but the profound and lasting psychological toll exacted upon the soldiers of Fort Campbell. These men, from the elite pilots of the 160th to the infantrymen of the 101st Airborne, are trained to be resilient, rational, and prepared for the absolute worst of human conflict. Yet their encounters with an entity that defies logic and biology shatters their sense of reality and leaves them with invisible, debilitating scars. The core of the trauma lies in the contradiction between what they know they saw and what the military establishment demands they say. The Dogman is confirmed by FLIR data, by the overwhelming stench of wet dog, by the distinct sound of its bipedal sprint eye, and by the terrifying vision of its reflective eyes. However, the institutionalized oath of silence forces them to internalize the horror. They are commanded to never say anything about it to anyone, turning a shared, verifiable event into a private nightmare. This lack of official validation causes soldiers to question their own sanity, undermining the very confidence and situational awareness required for their dangerous jobs. The constant sense of being watched is another key psychological stressor. Soldiers who have been near the creature report carrying the burning sensation of being watched long after the encounter is over. This hypervigilance, an evolutionarily primitive fear response, is exhausting and mentally crippling. For the Night Stalkers, this translates into constant distraction in the cockpit. For the infantry, it means debilitating paranoia during fire watch. This unseen intelligent observation transforms the Back 40 from a training ground into a hostile, actively predatory environment where the rules of engagement are dictated by the monster, not the Army way. Furthermore, the encounter with the impossible forces a reevaluation of the soldiers' faith in their own capabilities and technology. They are equipped with millions of dollars in gear and VTGs, thermal sensors, and high-tech weaponry. Yet all this advanced technology proves is that a creature of myth is real, and that their training provides absolutely no protocol for engaging it. The moment of freezing, the paralyzed with confusion and fear, is a deeply humiliating and terrifying experience for a combat soldier, forcing them to confront their own helplessness against the primal unknown. The psychological aftermath often includes symptoms akin to post-traumatic stress, but without a recognizable stressor to report. They cannot seek official help for seeing a monster, so the trauma festers in silence. The terrifying, graphic details like the soldier who was allegedly grabbed and nearly pulled into a storm drain pipe remain locked in their memory, creating a deep-seated fear that no amount of therapy or debriefing can easily resolve, because the threat remains active, real, and officially denied. The ultimate psychological toll is the forced realization that the biggest secret the military keeps is that there is a realm of horror beyond bullets and bombs, and they were powerless against it. We have flown through the darkness with the Night Stalkers of the 160th, shivered on the ground with the infantry of the 101st Airborne, and sifted through the terrifying evidence left behind in Fort Campbell's forbidden Back 40. We have documented the consistent, chilling reality of the Dogman, an 8-foot bipedal canine entity whose thermal signature and physical power defy all known zoology. We have connected this creature to the ancient, vengeful loop guru folklore of the Native Americans, a curse born from the desecration of the Trail of Tears and the countless unmarked graves that litter the training grounds. Furthermore, we have confirmed that this cryptid activity occurs in conjunction with sophisticated UFO sightings, including the Rammel diamond-shaped craft and the 1948 incident, suggesting that the Back 40 is a true paranormal nexus. The terrifying question that remains unanswered, even after all the detailed eyewitness testimony and technological evidence, is not, does the Dogman exist? Because for the soldiers of Fort Campbell, that question has already been answered with a resounding, terrified yes. The real, enduring mystery is, what is its purpose? If the creature is a biological anomaly, an undocumented species, then why does it consistently demonstrate intelligent, territorial behavior, targeting military personnel with calculated caution? If it were a simple apex predator, it would either avoid the massive disruption of a military base or aggressively attempt to consume the soldiers. Instead, it operates in a state of constant psychological harassment, sniffing around dug-in positions, observing from the tree line with its reflective eyes, and only retreating when directly provoked. If the creature is a spiritual entity, the vengeful loop guru, why does its presence so often coincide with the activity of advanced, high-tech UFOs? Is it a guardian of the sacred ground, fighting back against the intrusion of both the military and the non-terrestrial visitors? Or is the Dogman itself a result of these intrusions, an entity created, influenced, or manipulated by the silent, diamond-shaped craft that fried the radio tower in the 1980s? Is it an attempt at biological warfare, a creature released or monitored to destabilize the base's operations? The military's enforced silence on the matter is the final, most infuriating piece of the puzzle. The command at Fort Campbell has chosen to prioritize operational security and institutional credibility over the safety and psychological well-being of its own soldiers. They deny the reality of the creature, forcing the veterans of the 101st and the 160th to carry the burden of the truth, the knowledge that they are actively training in a place ruled by a powerful, malevolent entity that the U.S. Army is fundamentally incapable of defeating or even acknowledging. The Back 40 remains a forbidden place, a chilling testament to the fact that ancient curses and modern mysteries can coexist. For every soldier who pulls fire watch in the deep, dark woods, the terrifying reality is that their first sergeant's warning is truer than any manual. Be careful, be alert, because the greatest threat you face may not be a human enemy, but the very earth beneath your feet and the bipedal wolf that guards its secrets. The question is unanswered, but the horror is permanent.